Well, hello and welcome to Volume 8 of Drink the Music. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, today we're going to be talking about an album that is heralded by a lot of folks as one of the most important pieces of rock and roll music ever put down on recording thing, tape, cassette, CD. 8 track, maybe. I don't know for sure. But today we're talking about U2's The Joshua Tree. This is part magnum opus for U2. It is part gospel from U2. But it's real good. It's a real good album. It's going to be tricky to talk about. This album's been talked about a lot by a lot more people that are more in tune with the music than we are. But I think we have some fun things to talk about it. U2, The Joshua Tree. Michaela, what are we thinking?
A lot, I think, about the Joshua Tree. I think that this is definitely the most iconic album of U2, which is saying a lot because by this time, I mean, this is their fifth album. And it definitely feels like they have settled in. They've been a band at this point for about, I want to say 10 years. By the time this album made its way out, they'd already been heralded in 1985 as like the band of the 80s, which is pretty amazing considering we didn't know what was to come from 86 through 90, right? But they're already
It doesn't
uh
matter.
right. I guess it didn't matter because they were that great. They'd already made a name for themselves in the first four albums. They'd carved out quite a few hits. And then this just kind of came and revolutionized the way people thought about U2. And it's funny now thinking about what it must have been like hearing this album when it did come out, because if you were already a U2 fan, it's very different sounds, kind of
Hmm.
exploring, people talk about it like in a biblical sense because of the spirituality behind it. But now it has been, I don't know, 30 years, 35, geez, 35 years it's
35, yeah.
been. And now like everybody thinks of this album as the U2 kind of iconic uh tour de force of what that the band brought to the world music, you know listening ear of all, right? So
Hmm.
it's pretty interesting that there was a U2 before this and there was a U2 after this, and we can talk about that a little bit. But this is like the cornerstone of, I think, most U2 fans, especially if you are kind of an easy listening U2 fan. If you're like a super fanatic, maybe not, but this is where it all kind of, this is the crux of it all for us.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned kind of the albums before. So who was U2 up until we get the Joshua Tree? So we have U2 is Bono, The Edge, Adam Clayton, and Larry Mullen Jr. U2 was formed in 1976 when a 14-year-old Larry Mullen Jr. hangs up a flyer advertising band tryouts in his parents' kitchen. Paul Hewson, Bono, David Evans, The Edge, Adam Clayton, Dick Evans, The Edge's brother, turn up to form the group Feedback. And in 1977, it's just a year later, they played their first paid gig. They changed their name from Feedback to The Hype before a friend of Adam Clayton suggested a couple of different band names for them. U2 was amongst them, and that's what they settled on. And I love this, Michaela. So in March of that year, after changing the name to U2, they had a performance where they were performing some cover songs, which is what they were doing kind of up until that point. And then Dick Evans, who was older than the rest of the boys, was off to college. So he quit the band, left the band. So they played some cover songs. Then halfway through the show, Dick, kind of walks off the stage, kind of a final farewell to Dick, right? Very pro move. And then the band came back out and performed original songs as U2. So the U2, the four-piece band, was born there in that sense. U2 eventually lands with Columbia Records. They built a really big following actually in Ireland. They'd won a bunch of like Guinness band events and things like that. Kind of up until that point, they'd had some trouble catching on with a record deal because they were so young. But finally land with Columbia Records, and then start releasing their albums into the world. 1980, you have Boy, which went platinum. October comes in 1981, platinum. War, 1983, four times platinum, and The Unforgettable Fire in 1984, three times platinum. So U2 already a pretty big band by the time Joshua Tree comes out. They're looking to change their sound a little bit, to explore some things, to get a little bit more spiritual with stuff. And they're going to take this blend of kind of traditional Irish music and American folk music and set out to explore these two Americas, which was the working title of the album, The Real and the Mythical America in the Joshua Tree.
And I really think that makes sense because listening to some of these songs, and we're going to talk about it during kind of the deep dive, you I didn't know that it was called, it was going to be called the Two Americas, right? And rather than the Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree, for those who don't know, it's a tree, but it's also a national park that is in California, and it's really amazing if you ever get a chance to go. So that's where they took all the pictures of like the desert and but
Mhm.
it's really interesting to me because they're Irish in heritage, right? This band, and they're singing about songs that totally resonated with a lot of Middle America, right? And so, doing that research and thinking about it in a different way, yeah, listening to some of these songs, there were this dichotomy of what we thought of as this mythical idea of America being the land of milk and honey, the American dream, and all these things versus like what it was really like in that period of time for
Mhm.
the majority of working class individuals. But not only in America, but what that might have been, what helped formulate those ideas and that sound from an Irish perspective too. It was just really kind of neat. And something I had never really thought of before until I really started analyzing this for the sake of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's do this, Michaela. Before we get into the album, we're going to need a really good drink to get into this and chat about it. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to whip up this week's cocktail. We'll be right back.
All right, so this cocktail, we wanted to do something. I remember when we talked about the ideation of what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something that paid homage to like this desert wasteland, but
Mhm,
also
mhm.
wasn't sand in our mouth. I do remember there were a couple of really like dusty cocktails that we talked about.
Yep.
Um, and it was like, yeah, I don't know if that's going to really work. And then you found this kind of prickly pear concoction, which was easy to make and totally delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think of some flavors that would go along here with the Joshua Tree, and I was thinking, what kind of like desert flavors do you get? And a lot of that, yeah, was like tequila and like ancho chilies and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know, I don't really get that vibe from the album necessarily, but I do definitely get like the essence of the desert here for sure. But it's very much rooted in kind of this traditional Irish sense, so I wanted to pair up those flavors together. So something sophisticated but simple, sweet and sour, delicious, from the deserts, from the streets of Ireland, and we came up with the prickly pear whiskey sour. It's real simple. Whiskey sour is a fantastic drink. It is fancy looking, fancy tasting, but it's real simple to put together. So just going to need a couple of things, and let's do this. So into your shaker tin, go ahead and put in 3/4 of an ounce of prickly pear syrup. Now I found some prickly pear syrup online, so I just ordered that. You could make your own if you have access to prickly pears. Just do simple syrup, cut up some prickly pears, let them steep in there. It's going to pull out that essence there of the prickly pear. So 3/4 of an ounce of that, 3/4 of an ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice, 1.5 ounces of Irish whiskey, and an egg white. All that goes into your shaker tin. Go ahead and give that a nice vigorous shake for 20 to 30 seconds. And then you're going to add some ice and shake it again. 20 to 30 more seconds, get it nice and cold, and then strain it into a coupe glass, a rocks glass, martini glass, any kind of glass you want to go with. It's going to get this nice creamy layer on top. It is going to be this bright, vibrant pink from that prickly pear syrup. And then you're going to sip and enjoy. It's going to be delicious. Prickly pear, if you're not familiar, it's real sweet. It's kind of like this. It's almost like cotton candy meets a watermelon sort of flavor. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
real good. It would probably be good if you were out stranded in the desert and you ate one. You'd probably, I don't know, you'd go nuts or something. But real delicious. So, Michaela, what do you think about whiskey sours in general, but then in particular this one, pairing it with that prickly pear syrup?
I was very excited to see this because I love myself a good whiskey sour, and I've gotten really into them the last couple of years here at Drink the Movies. I didn't know how to make them. I didn't know that there were multiple kind of ways in which that could go. But spoiler warning, it's delicious. This I like the egg white. I think all whiskey sours should have egg white in it because it gives it that really creamy mouthfeel. without being creamy. It's kind of weird, but just go with it. If you've never done it, look, if you don't like whiskey sours, you should try this one anyway, because it
Mhm.
doesn't taste really anything like a whiskey sour. It's a very, it's got a good, it's got the same mouth feel because of the egg white, but the prickly pearness adds some sweetness. So if you aren't really into like a normal classic whiskey sour, I really encourage you to try this, because it's a very different profile. And the reason why that's a sour is just because of the way that we made it with the lemon juice.
Mhm.
But it's delicious. And I do think that this definitely resonates better from an album vibe perspective, because it's so not floral, but it's so much brighter, and the album
Mhm.
itself is got these moments of desolation, but also like so much richness to it. And when you're starving or dying of thirst in the desert, the prickly pear is supposed to be like nectar from the gods. I mean, the
Yeah.
people who would talk about it, biting into it that first time, and as the juice is running down, it's like the best thing ever. And that it's very umptuous, and I really like that.
Yeah, exactly. It has kind of a subtle sophistication to it here, this cocktail, which is really great and pairs nicely with the album. So go ahead and give that a try, or just make up a regular whiskey sour if you want, and take pictures, send those in, and all that stuff. But now, Michaela, we have this cocktail made. What we need to do is we need to take a quick break. We'll put the record on, and we'll be right back to talk about U2's The Joshua Tree. We'll be right back. All right, Michaela, let's just jump on into U2's The Joshua Tree, coming in from 1987. We're going to have 11 tracks here today, so not too long. It's only about 50 minutes, but it is 50 um, well spent minutes, I will say. So we're going to get this started off with track number one, Where the Streets Have No Name. There's kind of the synthesized organ that like you can't even hear when the track starts, and it just slowly kind of builds up and builds up. And I kind of liken this as to like this synthesized organ as like washing over you, like literally like baptizing you into the Joshua Tree. You get this little guitar riff from the edge that starts to make its way into the song. Then this giant kind of crescendo happens, and then Bono comes in. I want to run, I want to hide, I want to tear down the walls that hold me inside. Welcome to the Joshua Tree by U2, Michaela. In my humble opinion, this is the greatest opening song of any album ever. I could be wrong, but I'm probably not. It has this kind
I
of
don't think you are.
ethereal, it has kind of this ethereal quality to it, which I think captures kind of this vast magic of the desert, which really was so inspirational, in putting this album together. And it's bringing, these images of hope and hopelessness, at the same time, and kind of this pursuit of equality. Yeah, it's great, Michaela.
What Brian said, everybody. Just we should just not even listen to anything. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. And I think
I
that you're
felt so
absolutely right.
poetic when I was listening to it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, totally. I mean, it's the best intro to an album. I actually wrote this down in my notes. It's the best intro to an album that I can remember, because of the way that it builds the way that you just said, right? We have this idea that I don't know if I'm falling. I don't know if I'm driving fast to it. I know that I personally love waking up in the morning, and I used to listen to this going to school or to work. And if the sun was coming up, I always put this song on, because it's the way, it's like the universe waking up. You're waking up, a spiritual awakening. Um, and the uncertainty of what's going to happen in your day, in your life, your relationship, from a spirituality perspective. There's so much that this song creates, and and it's interesting because when you hear this song, you can't help but think of it as a beginning rather than an ending. And somebody told me that they would have preferred that that they change the orders of music in this. There's like this underground swell, if you look at it on Reddit, there where people are like, if I
Mm.
could change the order of this, it's like Star Wars. It's but it's like the Star Wars trilogy, but not. If they were going to change the order of the songs, and I think they're crazy, because I think this is the absolute best opening
That's
song of
that's the
any
worst idea I've
album.
ever heard. That's the
Right,
worst idea I've ever heard. This is
dude.
this is the perfect opening
You
song.
got to go check it out, because it's ridiculous. It's the
Uh,
perfect opening song.
that's
And
right.
I think you're right though. Like you say it like a baptism because you can almost hear this wave of sound kind of wash over you. The lyrics are pristine and perfect. I mean, it's just amazing. And coincidentally, talking the music video is amazing of this as well. I don't know if
Mm,
we're allowed to talk about the music video, but the music video is really cool. My husband, who is not a huge U2 fan because he likes Pearl Jam, I don't understand why you can't why they're mutually exclusive. We can talk about that later. But he remembers the first time he ever saw the video of this, and he was like, "This is the most amazing thing because it's this." Uh, completely spontaneous kind of concert that happens, right? And that
mm,
is, and it was real. It was a real thing where this band just kind of shows up and they're like, hey, and it's so cool. And he goes on about how that made him feel. And it's the best way to start this album. And we talk about consuming albums in a different way. I definitely think if you've never really listened to this album, you should in its entirety because it's probably now the only way I'm ever going to fly. So
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, and I liken it to a baptism because this album is very evangelical, kind of sounding to me. And we're going to carry on with that theme here into track number two. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So this song right here, it's a rock and roll gospel. It's feelings of longing for love, for religious enlightenment, desperate for some kind of connection somehow, some way. It's a beautiful song, I think, by all standards. It has kind of this sense of this gospel choir bit, especially because you'll get the members of the band coming in like this three-part harmony to sing, still haven't found what I'm looking for, which gives it kind of this gospel sort of tone to it, which is really pretty great. This was the second single from the album, and it was the second single to go number one.
yeah, I love this song. It's hard. It's hard to choose. This might be my favorite song on the album, just because
So it's a real Sophie's choice here in this first three
it
tracks.
it really is. Because it is so ethereal and uplifting, and yet scared. Like you can hear. I was listening to an interview where Bono was talking about his voice and what he wanted to do in the 80s. And somebody had talked to him, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, look, your voice is amazing and you could do all these things, but you have to sing about something that you really care about. It has to be something that breaks you. And I feel it in this song where he is, the protagonist in this song is looking and searching for something, and you don't know. When I was young, I remember I thought it was about love. um in my middle ages, I thought it was about fulfillment in life. Now I think it's like it's the ultimate question, like what are you searching for? And it's this
Mhm.
dichotomy of when you find it, what will your question have been? It's a very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of thing, right? Where we're like, I don't know what I'm finding. I'll know it when I get there, but what am I actually looking for? And that kind of duality and that mirroredness is so prophetic. And that's what makes this song so amazing.
Mhm.
And the fact
Yeah,
that
and
it's the second one, they were like, okay, we got one good one. Let's do
yeah,
this.
let's do this one too.
Let's just push
Yeah.
this one out too. And the whole world was like, what?
Yeah, for sure. I like kind of the framing of this song here because it's talking about kind of all the things that you've done, right? Scale the city walls. I spoke with the tongue of angels. I've kissed honey lips, right? It's you've done all these things, but you still haven't found what you're looking for. So it's almost putting kind of this like impotence on the journey itself, right? The journey of life as being kind of what you're actually looking for here in this instance. At least that's the way I take it. Track two, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And we get into track number three. This is the first single to go number one, with or without you. I love this little iconic bass line that kicks the song off. It's got softer vocals, and I really like kind of in the refrains here. The Edge is just like making his guitar scream. It sounds so pained. I love that so much. She got me with nothing to win and nothing left to lose has to be amongst the most tragic rock and roll lines ever written, I think. The outro to the song is as powerful as the intro because kind of the sustained guitar just keeps hanging on. Like it's really leaving you with a sense of longing from With or Without You. It's great. The song itself is just shy of 5 minutes. But once it's over, you're like, man, I wish this would go on for like ever, basically.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, other than getting rid of his poor pain, because he is so uh it's like a haunting, um just a pained, like the, and then with that guitar, like you said, that high note, it's almost going to break and crack, or it's stretching just too much to where it's never going to be the same again. And feeling like, uh what again, for me it was, what is this song about? Is it about a love that's, kind of toxic, but you can't get away from it? That didn't sit right. That sat real right for me when, in like the mid 90s, when I was in high school. This is great for teenage thanks, it's great. But the older you get, the more this song changes with you, and it probably has never changed, right? But you have grown into what this song actually means and the meaning of it. And combined with these top three songs, I wrote in my notes, did they intentionally like top load all their singles or what? Because it's like, you think things are not going to get any better with Streets Have No Name. Then you have Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And then you follow it up with this gem. It's like you can't get any better. It's like a three-layer chocolate cake. It's all amazing. It just gets
Hmm.
better and better. And this one, I think, because of the down register, he starts really down, and almost speaking the lyrics, um, in this, like, just a deeper richness to it.
Hmm.
And the fact that it's certainly a sadder song than the other two. Um, it's a really beautiful way to kind of explore the opening of the rest of the album, which gets into some other, like, topics altogether, right? This to me is like the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost of this album, right? You have all these three ideas that kind of mesh and meld, and then create this kind of byway and highway to all of these other thought processes that occur when you listen to this album.
Hmm.
And if you're not a huge U2 fan, if you've definitely heard more than just these three songs, but you might not have known it. I think it's such a cool way to experience U2, because this album, it was put together so purposefully, um, in
Hmm.
that way.
Yeah, and of course, when they're putting the album together, you don't know really how songs are going to hit and stuff like that, right? So you're kind of playing around with it, and apparently there was some back and forth on which songs would be singles. But I mean, you put on the Joshua Tree, and it's basically like a U2 greatest hits coming right out of the gate here. So that's our first three tracks, which gets us into track number four, "Bullet the Blue Sky." This one is some growly vocals and has this kind of more industrial sound, kind of rock and roll thing going on. Apparently, when they're recording the song, they wanted to really go for that industrial sound, so they played the drum track through a PA system in like the neighboring warehouse, and then recorded it in the studio next door. So it has this huge, kind of vast, open warehouse vibe to it.
That's
It's really
cool. I
neat.
had no idea.
You have to kind of listen to it, and it almost sounds kind of like an echo chamber there because of
Yeah.
that.
I was going to ask you about that, because that sound I put in my notes, I have no idea how they did that. Because it's like you said, it's like echoey and rocky and really heavy.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
wow. Okay. Good.
yeah,
Fun fact.
it sounds almost, if they were playing it like an airplane hangar or something, right? Because there's just so much echo and so much like vast space to it. So, Bullet the Blue Sky, it's very politically charged. It's really kind of drilling down on the military involvements in South America during the 80s, which is something Bono is very passionate about. And apparently, this song is one of the band's favorite songs. It opened almost every live performance for U2 from the Joshua Tree tour in 1987 all the way up until the Vertigo tour in 2005. That is a lot of shows to open with this song. I really like kind of the messaging of this song and how it pairs up with like this highly strained kind of guitar solo here as we talk about Bullet with Blue Sky.
Yeah. The high pitched vocals of it definitely feels like you're entering a war zone. I feel, it's interesting that you say that it was this their opening song, because I definitely feel like, again, Where the Streets Have No Name, probably the best opening album song ever. But like this, I totally could see. Now, I've never seen U2 in concert, live. I've seen videos and things, but this is like, come with us down into the dirt. and be with us here as we kind of talk about some of these issues. And um, the grittiness of it is really amazing. Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that this was their opening song from a concert perspective. I've never seen them live, but in the videos that I've seen of them opening with this, it's very much coming down into the dirt with us, experience this with us. It feels like you're in this war zone, kind of torn place. Um, and the haunting vocals on top of this like serious reverb, I didn't know what to call it, so I'm so glad you said where that sound came from, because it's so
Mm-hmm.
weird and unlike any of their other songs. Super amazing work from a sound mixing perspective on this for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially you go the first three songs, and as kind of big and epic as they are in terms of the songs that they are, they feel very like small. Like you could have seen these at a very small auditorium, but Bullet the Blue Sky sounds like it's just this huge, just vast sort ofness of space that the band is playing in there. So that gets us to track number 5, Running to Stand Still. Bono cites Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground as major inspirations to this song. I get a lot of Bruce Springsteen vibes out of Running to Stand Still. It's kind of this more soft, subdued folk song, especially coming after Bullet the Blue Sky, which is more searing for sure. Running to Stand Still, it's telling this tale kind of overdose. It's very poetic, talking about kind of these mean, tough streets around Dublin, where Bono kind of grew up there. It's very poetic, the lyrics, and it gradually kind of builds into the final line of the song, which is she's running to stand still, where it kind of just tails off and ends. Apparently, if you went onto U2's like I don't know, like fan page or whatever, they have kind of like these walking tour things of U2, and they're like, don't go to the area that the song talks about because it's a bad time. Don't go there on foot. But apparently, it's been kind of cleaned up and revitalized and stuff. But yeah, it's telling this tale of overdose. It's real sad, I think, but running to stand still.
Yeah. No, this is where I started to really think of things from kind of an Irish perspective for the first time, because to me this song reminds me of like Skid Row, some of the really like Tenderloin District in San Francisco, like places that are known to be these seedy, like drug addled, very heavy drug influenced areas of the United States, right?
Hmm.
Where there's people, that have very tough relationships with drugs, that are finding themselves without homes and things like that. But then this ah la 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 today kind of lyric comes in, and then I'm transformed back to what it might have been like in Dublin, or any of those towns where there's that street that no one likes to go down,
Hmm.
unless they're looking for a fix, right? And that really got me thinking about this idea of, hey, I've been so American in my listening of this album, um, and it's like this duality here was really transformative for me, because I feel like it's the first ballad on the album,
Hmm.
and it's got this like you said, this kind of Irish lullaby to it, on top of this like really gritty story about a girl who just has a very dark relationship with heroin. So I it's one of my favorites because of the way that it makes me think about things very differently and challenges my paradigm. And we talked about this a lot when we talk about films, but I love music that makes me think differently and makes me grow and challenges a thought process that I've had for 40 some odd years. And that really this song did that for me. And so it's one of my favorites on the album for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And track 5, Running to Stand Still, it really kind of piggybacks then those themes onto the next track, track 6. But before we get into that, we're gonna have to flip the album over here, Michaela, and take a wee bit of an album break. So let's talk about U2's The Joshua Tree here for just a second. They sold a lot of these, Michaela, 10 times platinum in the United States and 25 million copies roughly worldwide. Rolling Stone ranked it as the 26th best album of all time in 2003, the 27th best album in 2012, and the big drop off here. 135th best album of all time in 2020. I think those voters might have been a little agitated about U2's album going straight onto their iPhone. Not 100% sure there why the tail off. We can talk about that here in just a minute. Still haven't found what I'm looking for. Rolling Stone ranks as their 321st best song of all time. With or Without You is their 211th best song of all time. And the U2 song One is also on that list. So that's pretty good to have three songs in the top 500 songs of all time. Good job, U2. Let's see. This was nominated for the Song and Record of the Year for Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, and it won the Grammy for Album of the Year. There have been two remasters and reissues of this album, Michaela, one for the 20th anniversary and one for the 30th anniversary, which just happened about 5 years ago. And then they did the huge, gigantic Joshua Tree stadium tour where they just played the Joshua Tree in 2017 here in the US and then 2019 kind of elsewhere around the world, I believe. This album, pretty important. So says Congress. It was added to the National Recording Registry in 2014, making it the first Irish album to be put on that list. And this album, as we might have mentioned back in our Coldplay, Viva La Vida or Death and All of His Friends, was produced by the one and only Brian Eno, a master at his craft of putting these albums together. So that is kind of the bullet points here about U2's Joshua Tree. But Michaela, everyone knows those first three songs, right? We mentioned that kind of as we were going through there. Had you listened to any of the rest of this album prior to yesterday?
Yeah, yes. Yes, I can resoundingly say yes. So I remember when I was like 12, 13, I would go to this like arcade pool hall that was for like family friendly, and with or without you would play like ad nauseum. It was like everybody loved that song, and I remember being like, this is a really cool band, U2. And I was young, I didn't know any better, and I'm gonna say that and that's gonna be my excuse. But for, I don't know, a good 3 or 4 of my formative years from 12 to 16, I mean, I really didn't consume more than like the three singles. And it wasn't until I really got into college and started to explore the idea of albums and really be and have Napster and be able to like download songs without paying for them that I was like, it was a bad thing. It's not good. Don't steal music. That's not good. But I will say that from a musical education and research perspective, like, it opened my eyes to so many things that I never would have done in at that time, because music was expensive. You had to buy albums and it was hard to do. So I really got into U2 for a good 18 months and like heavy consumed it in college, and like started doing things like listening to albums and from front to back and things like that. So yeah, we should probably, I don't know. I didn't like having it just having that album show up on my Apple device when it did. But I do think that you've said this before, that U2 gets a lot of flack for that. And while they agreed to it, I mean, Apple, if you want to put Drink the Movies on everybody's iPad, I don't know if I'd say no. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was kind of pointed there. And I think it's because Bono as the person and kind of character, I think, kind of wears that, right? He's an easy scapegoat. It's very similar kind of to Tom Cruise, I think, in that sort of sense. But kind of these political messaging and thing, like, that's not new to U2. I mean, obviously, if you listen to this album, it's very much been kind of the backbone of the music and stories and messages that have been created, all the way back from the mid 80s to today. And yeah, who could blame you? Any band in the world, Tim Cook, or out of his Steve Jobs maybe, still then comes to you and says, hey, we're going to put your album on like 10 billion devices. That sounds good to me. It's free for everyone. What could go wrong? Apparently lots there. So that could have something to do with the slide. I've also never seen U2 in concert. By all accounts, it is something that is life-changing experience. The people that go that love U2, certainly my brother is a huge U2 fan. It's his favorite band. He's seen them several times live, and being my older brother, I was always inclined to think that whatever he thought was pretty cool. So I've always been a big U2 fan myself. And yeah, the Joshua Tree is as important of an album, not only for U2, but just kind of in the history of music. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about the legacy of it here as we get to the end. So let's carry on with the album here, Michaela. Side two, as I mentioned, kind of piggybacking off that Running to Stand Still kind of vibe, looking at this folk tale in Ireland. We're talking Red Hill Mining Town. So another folk song here. It's inspired by the English coal miners' strike in 1984, but the song was really kind of brought to life by this professional friendship that Bono and Bob Dylan were starting up there, and kind of this affinity for this working class music of Bruce Springsteen that Bono is really kind of falling in love with and trying to recreate here in this album. I like how this song also, it kind of is this slowly building thing, and it's kind of like anthematic in a way almost. And I really like kind of here, and really kind of a something that's true about the whole album is it's really kind of this simplistic but really well crafted like poetry of the album.
Hmm.
Like nothing is really like slapping you in the face with this kind of like visual imagery, visual like storytelling, but it's really kind of nuanced and beautiful. And I really like kind of the closing part here where it's saying, lights go out on Red Hill, lights go down on Red Hill, lights go down on Red Hill Town, right? So, what you're doing that's, affecting these miners isn't affecting them. It's affecting everyone. And I really think that that's beautiful. It's subtle and beautiful. So.
Yeah, for sure. This really was this. I mean, we talked about this in the last song, right? Where I thought about things from an American perspective and then thought, well, this is an Irish band. So like, why would they write about this? Is it actually about America at all? No, it wasn't. I mean, that was just me and my privilege, thinking it was somehow about me. I don't know. But this song, it was the same thing for me, where it really opened my eyes, because we have coal mining in the United States for sure, and but we're not the only place in the world, strangely enough. And so thinking about this from a duality and from kind of just a humanistic way of these issues that are faced in like these coal mining towns like in Virginia and in Montana even, right, where I grew up, that these issues and these same ideas of like a father and a son and trying to figure things out and what that life is like happens on all over the world. And that again, there's this beautiful idea of America. There might be this beautiful idea of Ireland, right? When you're not there and you haven't lived there, you've got this. You're like everything's green and lush and beautiful, and um, you've got the idea of St. Patrick's Day and all of that. But then there's very much like real life that is happening, and
Mhm.
it's not America's not just the land of milk and honey. It's not that. There's a whole bunch of things that is happening. There's a lot of in Ireland, the same thing, the political unrest, all of that, and seeps in through this song. And it's one of my favorites. I've said this like four times about the songs on this album, but it's one of my favorites for that reason.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you bring up a good point, and that's really going to lead into here. Maybe that's why the album was constructed in this way. You have kind of these three opus pieces, and then a little bit more searing politically, and then kind of these two kind of folk tunes. Going back to Ireland, but then we get into track number 7, "In God's Country," which is really, kind of dialing into what you just said. So let's talk about this one here a little bit. It has kind of this Sunday Bloody Sunday sounding opening to
Yes.
me. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of this like guitar arpeggio sort of thing going on. And this one, it's the Tale of Two Americas, right? Which was what the working title for the album was, as being kind of this seductive place of liberty and vanity. The band apparently doesn't like this song on the album. It's the shortest track on the album, but it was one of the singles, and it reached all the way up to number 44 on the Billboard charts. I really like the guitar parts here. I like how Bono's voice kind of is like falling down the scale as you go through the chorus here. But really, it's talking, like I said, it's kind of the two faces, right? So it's interesting to think of like an Irish band here in this instance, like looking at America and painting like this picture of
Hmm.
America, because for us, as citizens of the great United States of America, we're led to believe one thing about America, and but we're still living in it and dealing with it on the day-to-day basis. But for people that don't live here, you know USA is almost like this idea, right? It's like the
Mm,
idea of America is something, and you could say that, kind of about any country in the world, like you just mentioned, thinking about things in Ireland, the way we think about Ireland is far different than the way people that are living there think about it. So
right.
it's really kind of looking at that, but America has kind of propped itself up as being this idyllic idea of a place, and it's kind of examining that, and I think that it's really neat, and God's Country does really fantastic job, I think, of kind of highlighting the kind of duality of it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I really like the lyrics. We'll set me a light. We'll punch a hole right through the night. Every day the dreamers die. See what's on the other side. Because in both of these countries, right, we've had this idea that there are people that are willing to die for what they believe in, right? I mean, we get that shoved down our throats in public school history all the time. That America, people died for our freedoms and what all that means, right? And in an Ireland with and to me, this was kind of it was between like Northern and Southern Ireland and dealing with the religious political issues there. That people there believed so fervently in what they were doing, they were also willing to kill and die for it, and so that duality was really resonates with me in this song. It's interesting. I had no idea that they thought that U2, this is not their favorite, this is their least favorite song. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, I thought that was a kind of interesting
That's
little
interesting.
tidbit,
I mean,
little
I guess
tidbit.
every band has to have like a favorite and a least favorite, right? I mean, that makes
That's true.
sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So let's see. That gets us into track number 8, "Trip Through Your Wires." They got some sweet harmonica rock going on here. I really like that. It's kind of this country and a blues kind of thing. You might like hear this being played in like some like dusty, abandoned like bar that you're in on your travels out west. I think that the song is great. It's definitely more of like a lust song than a love song, I think. I imagine this song is like this little like hole in the wall that you stumble into. You're going through your journey, right, and still haven't found what I'm looking for. You're climbing the highest mountains. You're storming the city walls, but eventually you find yourself out west in this dusty little bar. And this song is playing, and you are just in desperate need of some sort of human and physical connection. Angel or devil, I was thirsty, and you wet my lips. So says the lyrics here, and I really
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say those are probably they might be my favorite lyrics on this song. I think in this journey, when you get to that place of desperation, it's a very dangerous place to be. When you become emotionally desperate for that connection, because you're almost willing to trust anybody with your heart, and with your belief system as well. Like when you become like spiritually devastated or spiritually desperate, where it's like like, I think of this as a giant journey to find meaning. You'll listen to any snake oil salesman that's like, "This is the way. I need
Mhm.
$8,000, and this is the way," or something else entirely, where it's like you have to give up everything that you've ever cared about, or sugar is bad. I mean, any of the things that we've been taught in life could fit this.
This song is great. I love kind of its placement here as you get through, kind of these folk songs, and then it gets into this. And like I said, it's almost like a rebuttal to it. Still haven't found what I'm looking for, and I really like the way that it sounds. It sounds really fun. Then we get to maybe the most emotionally charged song here on the album, or at least one of them, "One Tree Hill." This was written about a friend that the band made during while touring in New Zealand who died in a motorcycle accident. So therefore, it's very sentimental sounding. Apparently, they did not perform this song at all on the kind of first tour because Bono didn't think that he could make it through singing the song, which is really kind of sad and touching. I think it ends with kind of this run to the ocean, run to the sea. Kind of it's almost like spoken, and it takes on kind of like this prayer like quality to it,
Mm-hmm.
which I find really beautiful. Because all the rest of the music kind of drops out and it's just Bono kind of reading through those lines. And I really like the line in here. Uh, Jara sang his song "A Weapon in the Hands of Love," which is a reference to Victor Jara, who's a Chilean musician and activist. But yeah, his song "A Weapon in the Hands of Love." How could you not like that?
Yeah, right. Uh, it's this one was like super heart-wrenching to listen to. I'd heard it gosh, a dozen times. I think that this song was used in a lot of like television films and see. I distinctly remember it in a scene from ER that was like 10 years, maybe 15 years after the this album came out. It is super emotional and but I didn't really internalize it until like listening to it for the sake of this album and then doing the research and seeing the story behind it. So um really hard to listen to. And I don't blame Bono at all. I would have been like, I can't sing this. I could barely record this thing. There's no way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
wonder if his friend was also like loved Jara, and that's why this is kind of an homage to that. And I always wonder about some of these decisions when people make write songs about friends or about family, like how they put those things together
Mhm.
as a tribute to them, but also telling the story about what happens to them, because those are two different things.
Right.
Um, and so it's interesting. I'd love to know. I'll have to, if anybody knows, send us a message.
Let us know for sure. Yeah. So it's a beautiful song. It's very touching. And then you get into track number 10, Exit, which is a little bit more unhinged for sure. So I love how unhinged the fervor of this song has. Apparently this song came together in kind of like this jam session on the final day of recording. And it was inspired by the book, The Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer. I love kind of this fuzzy guitar bit that's going through and like this weird little like guitar slide that plays over this bass riff in the middle of the song. That sounds great. Listen for that. And one day we're going to talk about The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails, which is as dark and depressing and I don't know, terrible as an album could be, but I have to assume that this song was some sort of inspiration for it because it sounds so deranged and so dark.
Yeah,
And apparently, there were more verses to this song that Bono had written that kind of told the story a little bit more, but they decided to take those out and leave the song a little bit more ambiguous, which is why I think that that it works really, really well.
yeah. No, it's a mystery that's not really a mystery for me, for sure. And I love that where it leaves us wanting more. Absolutely. I definitely thought this was. I wrote it down. It sounds this downward spiral esque. Totally. I feel. Um, I'm glad that you know what the guitar parts mean because I was like, this cool part in the middle is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's my expert opinion, people. This cool part in the middle is really cool. But
Sounds
yeah,
cool.
that
There you
the
go.
slide or yeah, you what you said. I also really liked the this piece, his hand in his pocket, his finger on the steel, the pistol weighed heavy. His heart he could feel was beating, beating, beating. Oh my love. Oh, just shit. Sorry. I mean, darn. Wow. How about
Darn.
wow? Let's
Darn indeed. And apparently Robert John Bardo, for murdering Rebecca Schaefer, actually used this as part of his defense, this song, as that he listened to the song and it made him so unhinged, and that's why he committed that murder. So yeah, it's a really dark song. It might be my favorite song on the album, aside from kind of the top three there, of course. And this song is dark and a little bit more violent, and U2 decided to include the song here on this album because they wanted something with a bit of a violent edge to lead us into the final track, which is track number 11, Mothers of the Disappeared. So the mothers represented here in the song are the Madres de Plaza de Mayo, who are searching for the kidnapped children from the dictator-led regimes of Chile and Argentina. So you'll see kind of a theme here on the political stance of this album for sure. It's got kind of a plucky little like Spanish guitar sort of thing, and then it's using a drum machine which has kind of like this droning quality to it. It's real moving, and kind of like the rest of the album here. I mentioned it before. It's kind of painting this picture,
mm-hmm.
but it's really kind of subtle in the imagery that it's using. Um, pretty great here. And it's kind of like a almost like a rip the band-aid off moment here for kind of the end of the album, I think, right?
Yeah.
Pretty searing, right? To get these themes throughout the album of religious fulfillment, equality, tragedy, hope, and despair. And kind of when this album ends here with Mothers of the Disappear, to me, in the way that I kind of feel and the way I think about it is you're kind of left at almost like this crossroads thing, right? Where which side of this road do you want to go down? And I think that that's kind of beautiful and kind of neat that an album, 50 minutes of music can leave you in a place like that, which is pretty great.
Yeah. Now, this song was really hard to hear. I wonder, and I'd have to do more research to know, but I wonder if any of the band had children at this point that they wrote and did this song. Um, I, as a parent, it's very hard to actively learn about crimes like that, right? Where children are taken, kidnappings, whether it's politically driven or not, these sorts of things are really, really difficult. Um, the lyrics of in the trees, our sons stand naked, and through the walls, our daughters cry, see their tears in the rainfall. I mean, oh my gosh. It's, very much like U2 has been like, playing with our emotions, not playing with our emotions, but they've been tempering us and taking us through. And this to me is just the absolute worst, like it's a mom's worst nightmare. Like your kids are just gone and they're
Mhm.
nowhere. And so you hear them through this space. Um, and so it's really and it's really hard because I obviously thought of it that way, but then we're coming off this spiritual journey, and so it's like, are we the kidnapped children? And the answers that we've been so desperately looking for are also are there, and they're looking for us, and we're the tears in the waterfall, and we're the ones who are the silent criers, like, on the other side of the wall, like this kind of idea that what we think we've lost is what is ourselves, and like you said, a crossroads, like what do we do with this now?
It's a really nice sort of sad kind of end piece to this album, which like I said is part magnum opus and part kind of gospel, and part kind of evangelical telling from U2 here, but it captures on a lot of themes that are really kind of designed, I think, to make you think, right? He was exploring, kind of the idea of this American folk type of music to kind of pair with this more traditional Irish type of folk music that they were, a little bit more familiar with, and kind of the more punk rock sounds, I guess, of the music that U2 was more associated with up until the point that this album came out. And obviously it comes out and it kind of sweeps the world by storm. It's interesting in a lot of ways to me because sometimes you have albums like that are considered amongst the greatest pieces of art ever composed, and a lot of times it takes time for that to kind of sink in, for people to realize the genius of it. We spoke about that with Joni Mitchell's Blue, right? It's only kind of been in the last 10 years where it's really being propped up as this work of art that it is. But this one pretty much hit kind of straight off, and I think a lot of that's probably the power of those first three tracks. Just incredibly well written, beautiful, timeless songs that are two of the best 500 songs of all time, at least according to Rolling Stone. So
Yeah.
it has kind of that interest in it, as well as that now it's propped up as this masterpiece, but it's always been heralded as something that was just brilliant. So
Yeah. I think when 30% of your songs are like epically amazing and are considered that immediately, I mean, I am a little surprised that this album hasn't gotten, it didn't get higher on like the best albums of all time, because
mm-hmm.
uh, even people who aren't fans of U2, like even my husband, who is like this diehard Pearl Jam fan, and again, I don't understand that dichotomy. If someone understands that, like was there like a fist fight or like a arm wrestling match in 1992 when Pearl Jam came out and was like, you can't, it's mutually exclusive, you can either like one or the other? I don't understand it, um but even he was like, this is the best album, it's so good. We were listening to it on our long car ride a couple of times because I was trying to make good notes, and he was like, "God, this is just such a great album." And so, I mean, even when people who love to hate on U2 for whatever reason thinks that this is one of the best albums of all time, I'm really surprised it's not higher.
Yeah, for sure. I will leave with this because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole about U2 and Pearl Jam, but U2 and Pearl Jam have performed together. Here's a video of Bono with Eddie Vedder and Mike McCready performing "Rockin' in the Free World" together in Hawaii. They do a lot of philanthropic work together, so I don't really understand that at all. There's place in your heart for more than one love. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, so that is U2's The Joshua Tree. It is it's a staggeringly beautiful piece of work. So if you haven't listened to uh U2 beyond those first three tracks, definitely give the rest of it a listen to. It's only 50 minutes, so it's not a huge time commitment to get into it for sure. It is well worth your time, and you can kind of see kind of the reason why U2 then, with the release of this album, actually before the release of this album even, were considered the band of the, so this hadn't even come out when they were proclaimed the band of the 80s. They're like, well, you haven't seen anything yet. So that's kind of amazing, I guess, on a side note. So I don't know, Michaela, that's about it. We could go on and on about it, and people have analyzed this album to death, but we think that it is pretty good. Check it out, and make sure that you check out our cocktail, the Prickly Pear Whiskey Sour, while you're listening to it. It's a really good one, and it is pinkish in color, so make sure you send a picture of that. Michaela will love to see that. So send it in on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram and X and Threads. It's facebook.com/drink the movies. You can go to our website, www.drinkthemovies.com. You can get recipes, pictures, episode recaps, all that good stuff there. Do that, and make sure that you check out our Patreon site, patreon.com/drink the movies. That's where we have album polls. That's where we have bonus content. We just had a little bonus about the Killer's Hot Fuss murder trilogy. So we had a murder trilogy last week, Michaela, and now we have a pretty murderous song here too in Exit. So I don't know what that says about us, but go check that out. Patreon. It's a great way to support the podcast, and we appreciate our patrons so much. Michaela, if people want to get signed up to make sure they're in tune with us when we got the next album coming out, where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Good Pods. Not Stitcher. Stitcher's not Stitcher anymore. What's it called?
Sorry, Stitcher listeners. I hope
Sorry.
you're listening on something else.
Sorry. Well, whatever you're hearing us on right now, there's a subscribe button. And if you subscribe, you're going to get 2 drops a week. Generally, that's if you're not on our Patreon. We have all extra good stuff on Patreon, which you should check out as well. But if you're loving Drink the Movies, Drink the Music, all of that, tell your friends, leave a 5-star review. It really helps us get the Drink the Movies, Drink the Music out there. Fun fact, Brian, we have yet again topped our listenership this last week. I have
Mm-mm.
no idea what's going on, but I'm so excited that we're reaching more people to talk
I'm gonna
about our love of cocktails, movies, music, all of the things. It's so exciting.
I'm gonna chalk it up to the Beatles and or the Killers. Probably not us, but maybe
Oh yeah,
maybe
it's
maybe it
definitely
is.
not me.
Yeah, it could be. No, but we're blown away by the supports, and we're blown away that people are listening to us talk about albums at all. It's been a lot of fun. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to have Volume 9 coming out next week. We just have to get that Patreon poll up, pick a drink, and we'll be ready to chat about it. So thanks you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
music,
Music.
with or without you.
I still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Mm.